Welcome back to the Human First CEO series on LinkedIn Live. I'm Nick Maida, CEO of Gainsight, and it's been a pleasure for me for the last few months to be able to interview CEOs that I admire to talk about how they run their companies in a human first way, whether you're talking about their customers, their employees, their families, their community. How do we treat all our stakeholders as human beings? And with me today is Mike Ettling, the CEO of Unit4. I've known Mike for a couple of years now, been really impressed by the way Mike treats his stakeholders. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, Nick, good to see you again.
It's awesome seeing you too. And it's been great getting to know you at various CEO events and conversations, and honestly hearing not just how you think about the business, but how you think about the stakeholders around you. But it's also great getting to know you as a human being. I know you had some fun travel pre-COVID. I think you flew, if I'm not mistaken, to Japan last year, right? Was it a big sporting event of some kind?
I got to the Rugby World Cup final in November last year.
Right.
So that actually ended up my last trip before lockdown, where I was in the Valley and was heading to Vancouver and decided to head back to home in Florida.
And you're in Florida. You run a global company with a big presence in Europe, but you've been locked down, for the last 7 months, like all of us. So before we jump into the human first business side of things, let's talk about you as a human being. What are you itching to go do post lockdown? Once quarantine is lifted.
Well, I think I'd say I haven't. It's not kind of post lockdown because I have been able to do some traveling already, and we kind of exited lockdown in June. I've done a couple trips to Europe. My first trip was actually to Cyprus, where the government of Cyprus is a client of ours.
Oh, interesting.
So it's less about the travel, and actually travel's quite pleasant because it's so quiet and airports aren't crowded. But I think what I'm really looking forward to doing is having a team meeting, a physical team meeting, and getting my team together and being able to look at them and talk to them in a 3D fashion versus, this 2D we're living with at the moment.
What a novel idea, being able to see your team in person. I think that will return sometime soon, maybe after the vaccine.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about, success for all. How do we drive success for all of our stakeholders? And Mike and I have exchanged many notes over the last few months just about how we've tried to navigate our stakeholders during this last challenging kind of 8-9 months. So we'll start with the community. So Unit4, I think you've done a great job of making sure Unit4 is a great member of the community around you, whether it's the local communities, kind of the global community. Talk a little bit about how you thought about that kind of pre-2020 and maybe how that's evolved or changed with 2020.
Yeah, I think, I'm a great believer in the African concept of Ubuntu, which basically says, you are what you are because of who we all are. You don't exist in a vacuum. And I apply that, to a lot of different aspects. And the concept in business is that businesses don't exist in a vacuum. There's no such thing as business and then political life and social life and this life. It's all together. And we have to live in the communities we live in. And we exist because of them, and they exist because of us. So I think, what we did in 2020 during lockdown, we actually took the opportunity to really relaunch our CSR programs. It's called Act for Good at, we Unit4, so it's Act for Good, where we're doing a lot of different volunteering and fundraising activities. And I think what's really interesting is one of our big verticals, which we supply software to, is the not-for-profit vertical. So we actually work and have a lot of direct engagement with not-for-profits. And at our big customer event recently, we've really focusing on the not-for-profit called I Am the Code, which is an African-led movement, which is all about developing STEAM education in Africa. And essentially the target is to get 1 million women to be coders.
Wow.
So our people are going to help mentor young women into becoming engineers and coders. And we're going to help contribute and raise funds for I Am the Code. So that, we've tried to pick something which really reflects, what we are. We're a software business. We're fundamentally an engineering company, and something which has big impact in communities, particularly on a potential global scale. And then a little bit of personal bias, given I'm from South Africa originally.
That's awesome. I love that, by the way. So many things to pull on. I think the Ubuntu concept is amazing. I think that really does capture the spirit of what we're seeing. And you kind of know company is an island on its own. It's, we all exist in a broader ecosystem. And I love that you've taken your business and your technology and kind of connected it to the community versus just donating money. I mean, donating money is great, but you found a way to make it more integrated into what you do. And I think it's awesome also that it fits your personal passion with, coming from South Africa. I think that's really great as well. I'm curious, as a CEO, how much do you drive sort of the agenda of where Unit4 is active in the community based on sort of your personal strategy and philosophy versus sort of it's bottoms up and the employees drive it?
I think it's both. I always say that a good CEO, a hallmark of a good CEO is a CEO asks a lot of unreasonable questions. But a good CEO also has the ability to take no as an answer. And my team will say, I'm always asking unreasonable things or throwing things out there. But a lot of the ideas also come bottoms up from the organization. So I think it has to be that blend. And our Act for Good program was really put together, grassroots in the organization, and really proud of it. And I'd say, some of the other things we're doing from a community perspective is, and this really came about as a result of COVID. My biggest concern when COVID happened was wellness of our people. We're not designed to be locked in and doing this 10 hours a day.
Right.
Fashion. Humans weren't designed like that. So how do we do get the wellness of our people right? And, we came up with things like we called Fit for Good, where every day one of our own people was running a fitness program or meditation or something like that. And we also came up with something which we called Inspiration for You, which was all about podcasts of inspiring type people talking. And we've extended that now to our community. So those programs
that's awesome.
Focused on how do I create wellness for my people. Now we're saying, why don't we share it with our customers and prospects? And so in our community portal, you can access all the stuff we're doing internally now in that regard.
I think that's awesome. And I love the two things I'd pull on there for people that are watching are, I like that you branded this too, because it makes it feel more authentic to who Unit4 is. And that you kind of broke the wall between the company and the community. So that's a good segue to kind of the second chapter, which is talking about how we all drive success for our team. And obviously this year has been challenging in that regard, but also an opportunity for leaders to step up. You and I traded some emails about this, about how do you show up to your team? How do you be positive? I think you had some great messages for your team. So maybe you could talk a little bit again about pre-COVID, kind of your approach to kind of values and leadership at Unit4, and then maybe how that's evolved post-COVID.
Yeah, so I would say there hasn't been much change, and I'll explain why. And I think that's actually a good sign. When I joined this company and took over the leadership in March 2019, we really started focusing on what are our values. And I've been on record many times in saying that 75% of leadership is setting purpose. Getting the purpose right and setting the purpose. If you get the purpose right, you've got the wind behind you in terms of what you need to accomplish. So we had a great purpose in our strapline. We just didn't do much with it. And the purpose was in business for people. We build software for people-based companies. That's what we do. We're in business for people. So we put a lot of effort into really redefining our values. People first, choose curiosity, make an impact, be genuine, and then really recognizing people who live by those values. So we started a recognition program called Kudos for You, which is all about spotlighting people who've lived by those values. And those were things we were starting anyway and then driving through. We also started something where we said, look, most companies have vacation time and time out and all the rest of it. But actually, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's all about delivering product and delivering output and delivering results. So do I really care about, do you have 20 days vacation or 10 days vacation or 60 days vacation? So in June last year, I moved to a, what we call our work-life balance program, which has no caps. Basically, we have no caps on vacation. And we were the first company to make it work in Europe, because we figured out how to do it within the legal constructs of statutory minimums, but then no caps. And that was probably one of the most significant benefits we had when COVID hit. I remember being on a lot of CEO calls and CEOs talking about the anxiety their people were having over PTO, taking time out for kids at home. Will they have vacation time when it comes to the summer, etc.? And of course, we never had that problem because there were no caps. Nobody was stressed over, am I taking too much time? So I think you build culture and you build values and you build a great people experience in an organization by actually lots of little tactical things. It's not some grandiose scheme. You've got to turn it into lots of little tactical things like changing work-life balance, changing values. How do you create CSR programs? And all of that comes together to really create a whole different people experience in your business.
That's awesome, Mike. There's so many things to emphasize there. The people first, obviously that fits very well with the theme of this kind of series. And, I think the example of doing, uncapped vacation globally, if you're in the US and watching this, that might seem, oh yeah, a lot of companies do that. But I've investigated how to do that outside the US and it's actually complicated. And frankly, I was told it's impossible. So now I know from you, Mike, that it's not impossible and you kind of fought through it and figured it out. So I think that's super powerful. I think another thing that's interesting about your story for folks that don't know is that you came into Unit4. It was already a very successful company. You're taking it to the next level. And so that's different than being able to create the values from day one as sort of, founding a company. How did you approach that? Because the company had some probably existing values and culture. You probably had a philosophy. How did you find the right balance?
I think what was interesting is I think the company had really good values. And there was one aspect which really resonated for me, which I think is so crucial in a software company, is that I remember going around in my first 2 months to every office and talking to people, and people would tell you what's wrong and this is not good and that's not good. But almost without exception, you'd get to a part of the conversation where they all came to, and we love the product, but we love the product and the product is fantastic. And, I can think of some companies I were in previously where salespeople will throw the product under the bus at the first opportunity. So to me, that was, wow, I've got the best natural ingredients I could ask for. And that is awesome. Immense passion for the product. With that, you can build anything on it, in my view. Without that, you really struggle. So that, I walked into an environment where when I saw that, I was like, yeah, we have to get people aligned. We have to create the purpose. We have to, create some of these tactical things. But fundamentally, I've got the great raw ingredients.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think that's a great way to kind of do an inventory of what you have and then build on it. The last thing I want to talk about with the team is probably the obligatory question every CEO asks every other CEO, which is about return to work. All of us are trying to figure out, none of us know the answer, but you mentioned, being able to see your team face to face. I'd love to hear, how you're thinking about this, particularly given the company's so global. How are you thinking about phasing into offices or whatever the new normal is?
So look, I think we thought about this a lot. And, one of my past lives, I was running a global payroll company. And the more we started thinking about what do we do, the more I realized this is probably more of a complex problem than writing global payroll. Not only have you got lots of different rules, you've got local things, you've got personal dynamics. In the US, you've got 50 versions of it. It's impossible. So we kind of said at the end of the day, we're going to take this opportunity to actually put in a new policy like we did with our work-life balance, take whatever you need. Mm-hmm. That is, we're going to a work from where you're comfortable policy. And we call it Flex for You. And we're hiring people now. We've hired a lot of people during this crisis, and they're all on this new policy. And that basically says, look, you do what makes sense for you. If you feel today you need some people interaction and the office is allowed to be open in the country you're in, and go to the office. If all the health, we will put in all the health and safety protocols required in that country. If you don't, and you feel you're going to be more productive at home because you've got a delivery coming in, work from home. And that whole principle of which we established last year around, we trust you. It's all about trust, the work relationship. You will get done what needs to be done. We're not going to police your time. We're not going to insist you're in the office or you're not in the office. So we've really taken it as a big opportunity to totally redefine that to this flexible working policy, and then at the same time redesign our real estate around the world to really enable that. So no one has an office; it's all flexible,
right.
drop-in type environments, and so in many ways we haven't gone one or the other way. We've used it to actually go a new way as a result of the crisis.
That's great, and I think it's really relevant for everyone else, because I think all of us are in this sort of coordinated ecosystem, and the more companies like Unit4 are offering that type of flexibility, and we do the same at Gainsight, honestly, the more it's going to become a standard for employees. So they're going to actually expect that. So it's really going to re-level the playing field. I think it's very interesting. And I love the underpinning principle of trust, which is, fits into everything you talked about so far. So let's talk about the third chapter, my favorite, I have to always talk about, which is customers, right? Given what I do. And sort of driving success for customers. And, just for context, Mike is a CEO of Unit4, but he ran one of the first SaaS businesses when SAP bought SuccessFactors. And even before that, payroll in some ways was always a recurring revenue business. So Mike, you've been dealing with customers and customer management probably your entire career. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about customer success fitting into the Unit4 strategy?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, Nick, and I'll tell you the story. I've done a lot of advisory work for private equity funds, and one of my kind of you develop over the years when you're looking at companies kind of asset tests, 5 or 6 things you go in and look for straight away, and one of mine was always going in and looking at the org chart of a software company and seeing if there was a head of customer success on the senior team, and to me that was an immediate indicator of, are you a cloud company or not?
That's interesting.
And, that kind of was, if you hadn't got that right, you're not. And why is that so important? Because, I always tell this in a humorous way that in the old days of on-premise, customers would bandy together and form user groups like trade unions to go beat up the software company, to listen to what should be in the product and, be heard and have their demands heard. Well, in the cloud world, we don't generally have user groups. We have communities. And the reason is because we want the communities together. In the on-prem world, you were petrified of one customer talking to the other customer and sharing. In the cloud world, we don't discount like we did in on-premise. So we want our customers to talk to each other and help each other and engage with each other. It's a totally different mindset. So, we are fundamentally an on-prem to cloud transformation. So one of the big things I put in and started when I joined was to really build customer success. And for me, customer success is not a function; it's a way of being. The whole company has to be focused on it. So yes, you have to have customer success execs, but customer success starts from the first sales contact, and finishes at the point if unfortunately the customer gives you a termination notice. And your customer success has got to span that whole life cycle. And everyone's got to understand where they are in the life cycle and how that life cycle looks. And most importantly, everyone's got to understand, and this is where you build differentiation, what are the moments that matter in that life cycle for your customer, in your context, in your industry. So, for not-for-profit, the moments that matter might be different to a consulting firm who's a customer of mine.
Right.
So I see it as pervasive. It needs to run through the fabric of the whole company. And yes, you have a customer success team who's doing some of the transactional stuff, but they also own that culture. They own that whole life cycle in the organization.
That's awesome. And I think the way you said it, of both a department, but also this company-wide philosophy, is exactly what we recommend. Talk about how you structure it inside Unit4 and sort of what's inside the customer success team and then what's in the sort of cross-functional layer.
Yeah, so my head of customer success, I was very fortunate to bring someone from our past life who came across, who'd run it at SuccessFactors. And we have put everything in customer success. It goes from, we've got professional services teams, we've got our customer success team, we have our cloud operations team in customer success, and we have our internal IT team.
Oh, interesting.
So my head of customer success actually has all of that in one place. So I really almost have like a tripod model where I have chief sales team, which is everything from the front end, sales and marketing. And then I have product management and engineering. And I have customer success, cloud ops, which is kind of look after the customer in the most end-to-end holistic way. And actually recently for the customer success teams, we recently hired a lady, Michelle. We actually did a LinkedIn Live the other day, who's actually had 2 past experiences with Gainsight, and she's based in Chicago. So she's running the actual customer success team, within that broader team. But that's how I've grouped things.
Yeah.
And the reason for that grouping is that, again, it's the transformation. In the old world, professional services was all about billability. How do we make the biggest project with the most customization, and that's success? And then we disappear when the customer goes live. In the cloud world, it's all about speed to go live, time to get live. How do we do it as standard and as quick as possible? And the project starts when we go live. And it's a fundamentally different culture. So that's why I put all of these things together, to really group it more logically and not have on-premise silos.
That really resonates. The everything you said as part of sort of what we'd recommend as well. The one thing that I think is really interesting and maybe forward-leaning is IT being in there. Was it because you're trying to transform and the systems need to be part of the transformation, or was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's part of IT. As a company which has grown up, we're 40 years old. We've built the patchwork quilt of IT systems. Unlike a company like yourself who started, and you probably, I keep using the example when I sit with my team, and I bet you Nick doesn't have 100 cloud applications. So we put it all there because we want to, we got to think about the IT applications we need in the context of customer success and customer lifecycle, not in the context of solving somebody's little functional problem. And if it doesn't enhance the customer lifecycle, why do we need it? Kind of response. And then also the other thing of, we deploy our cloud solutions fit to standard, rapidly adopt the standard.
Right.
We need to drink our own champagne and deploy solutions the same way. And, that's how we did it with you. Tell us standard, Nick. I don't want any customization in my environment.
That's awesome. That's definitely an important philosophy for all software now in the future. Let me wrap this up then. So, I like to do some closing questions just to get a sense of maybe some takeaways for people. One of them is if you're giving advice to a CEO who maybe just hasn't worked in this kind of people first, human first type model, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Be authentic, be yourself. There's almost, there's a paradox I often see where CEOs think I've got to have a corporate persona and then I've got my personal persona. And there's this really interesting paradox. The more you put your heart on your sleeve, the more people trust you.
Totally.
The more you open up, the more people trust you. So, my biggest advice to CEOs is particularly when you're starting as a CEO, be yourself, open up, really let people understand who you are before you even talk and tell them direction and strategy and whatever. Just spend time telling them who you are and let them discover that. And then the rest comes a lot easier.
That's phenomenal advice. I think, Brene Brown's vulnerability, TED Talk, if you haven't seen it, it just shows the power of being yourself. So I really appreciate that. Let me close out with some word association. I always like to do this for fun at the end. So I'm going to say a few phrases and you say the first thing that comes to mind. So digital transformation.
COVID-19.
COVID-19. Okay, COVID-19. That's my second word.
Innovation.
Innovation. You didn't say digital transformation, so that's good. You kept it moving. Customer success.
Business.
Business. Okay, there you go. Future of business. And then either people first or human first, either one.
Leadership.
Leadership. That's right. Well, people first leadership, human first leadership. That's what this is all about. Thank you so much, Mike. It's always so fun to hang out with you. I can't wait to see you in 3D sometime soon. We'll do that. for now, 2D you'll have to do. And all the best to you and your family and your business. And thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Nick. And I hope you're not going back under the staircase with that T-shirt.
Yeah, they let me out every now and then. Good reference. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.